Alright, this is a video on WAC and growth again, not project finance, and I'm going to try to finish this set of videos. Okay, here's the. Let me introduce the subject a little bit. Okay, let me show you first where you can find the file. Okay, so you go to the website and then go down to the box named Cost of Capital and WAC, and then there's a lesson set just on the cost of capital, but then there's a lesson set on the WAC too. Now I know that it seems that most people who look at the website and all that are into this project finance and WAC and DCF and growth and corporate financing don't seem to be the big issue, but I'm trying to finish this set so I can get back to some project finance issues. Now I have a issue with the growth rate. Okay, I want to introduce perhaps let me introduce the issue first. So we start with this, perhaps I'll make this a little larger. Start with this pretend situation where we have some companies with some different betas. Now I just inputted a unlevered beta, and then of course on these ones, I put some variables in. And the variables are, excuse me, I don't want that big a debt percent. Okay, all of these variables, I seem to be having trouble. Just a minute, I gotta, I hate this. All of these variables with decimal points, so you have to do this two-stage thing. You go to another sheet, back to the same sheet, go from 0 to 100, and then this variable is the number divided by 100. Okay, and in the so I have been talking about this issue that now I'm going to just say it straight out. I think the right way to do this is if you have some debts. So here's the debt is I said, okay, let's take the debt as a percentage of the market value. All right, and that gets into the circularity kind of issue. Okay, and then let's take the debt, and that's the gross debt. Let's take the debt and take that net of tax. So if we have a debt that's at 50% net of tax, the true economic liability is 40%. When we have, let me see, where's the, I'm going to delete all this crap, excuse me, I have been struggling with this like you cannot believe, okay? And I believe we found something. Yeah, maybe. Okay. And so the growth rate, I put a growth rate here of 2%, and somewhere I put the tax rate. The tax rate I think I put just up here. There was the tax rate. So if we have a different tax rate, we get a different kind of net amount in our capital structure. I left the beta on the debt as F43. Let's put the beta on the debt as 0.2. The beta on the debt doesn't really have much of an effect on anything. All right. Okay, so this is our net of tax capital structure, and then we have I'm going to rename this, is our typical WAC capital structure. Now the big thing about this, the big difference is that in the WAC capital structure you take the after-tax cost. In the net of tax method you take the tax out of the debt itself, okay, and in this one you take it out of the after-tax cost. What you want to have is the value of the company, and in this case, if we take the value out of the debt, our debt without the tax shield is this, and then our kind of enterprise value that we get would be the higher amount. Okay, and excuse me, that's not right. The enterprise. Well, let me come back to that. Just a minute. Sorry. So in this case, this is the gross debt and the value of the equity. You see the value of the equity, that's the key thing. That's the same in both cases. However you want to define the enterprise value, this would be the typical definition of the enterprise value. Now, in the earlier videos, I demonstrated that, well, you know, you can take the all equity cost of capital back into the uh, uh, cost of equity, and you should put the same cost of equity in the WACC capital structure. That avoids all the circular reference. Then I went through all of these things and demonstrated, you can go through this, I'm not going to worry about it too much, but when you change the growth rate, there's some cash flow that occurs from raising new debt. That's an inflow to the company. And if you're going to grow the company and have the same sort of capital structure, you have to reflect the cash on the new debt. And then I did this whole valuation in two different ways. Okay? One with the net of tax capital structure and one with the gross of tax capital structure. And this is the net method, and this is the gross method. Okay, and what happens, as long as the growth rate is 0 or the tax rate is 0, you get exactly the same values. All right? And there's a circularity in here. I left a iteration. And there's a even, I'm not going to worry about this right now because this is such a much bigger issue. Okay? Now here's the problem. If we put a tax rate here of, let's say, 20%, okay, and now if I put a 0 growth rate, you still get this exact same answer. But if you put a growth rate here, and you put a tax rate, you notice that the typical WACC method gives you a higher number. Now here's the whole point. I should have been making this whole point again and again and again and again. This is correct. Okay, how about this? I'm going to put this correct. And I'm going to prove it to you right now. And this is biased. Oh, I've got French here. Excuse me. All right. And I said, okay, there must be a way to reconcile this. There must be something wrong because everybody uses the WACC. The WACC can't have an inherent bias where you increase the value of where the value of the company is increased. And by the way, if we put a lower equity market risk premium here, okay, and we put a higher debt percent, the bias is increasing. And if you put a low risk-free rate here, I should have perhaps put a much lower risk-free rate. When we have a low cost of capital and a high growth, oh my gosh, we can't even get it then. And now this is really bad because this what a perfect example of how circular references suck. I have the iteration button turned on, and that created an error. This is a perfect example of why you can't have the iteration button on ever. Now you can't undo this. You can't get rid of it. It's a disaster. The only thing I know is I think I can happen to re-put in the capital structure, and we can get the. Okay. We better put so I'm going to put a higher equity market risk premium in. Oh, perfect example of the the stuff with the iteration button. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry about that. Okay, and I'm not going to redo this video because of that error I just said. All right, and then we... okay, oh my gosh, let me pause the video just a minute. Okay, I was able to recover that. Okay, and I just don't know when you have both tax rates and growth rates, there is a bias. And I spent a whole day on it. I wasted a whole day of my life on this. And let me kind of prove it to you with a simple example. Let's say you have a growth rate and a tax rate, a growth rate of 2%, a tax rate of 4%, and some debt of 1,000, and you have the interest rate on the debt of 5%. Now what I did here is I selected this whole area and then press Shift Control F3 to get named ranges on all of this, and it says, well, we're going to put them in the left column. Okay. Now if we just do a classic kind of this net method, we say, okay, well, I'm going to take the net of tax cash flow that we're actually experiencing in our company, and I'm going to multiply that by 1 plus the growth rate, which has now got a range name, and I'm going to divide that by the cost of debt minus the growth rate. Okay, and then I get my number. Now, if you're using the gross method, it's a little bit different. You make two adjustments. Okay, now let me make this a little wider. Okay, this time I said, well, we're going to take the same cash flow. All right, and then I'm going to again multiply this same cash flow by 1 plus the growth rate. And this time I'm going to divide it by, instead of the regular old rate, I'm going to divide it by the net rate minus the growth rate. Okay. And here's the problem. You're supposed to get the gross debt back. If you put zero taxes, you get back zero growth, you get back to that 100%. If you put zero taxes, you get back to the zero. Here's the market value of the debt. Oh, the market value of the debt is going up over time, so you get the exact same thing. Now what you're supposed to do essentially is, if let's put a tax rate of 40% and zero growth, if you want to reconcile the two, you can well say this debt we get by using the net rate, well, I can just multiply that by 1 minus the tax rate. So I can go and, where's my tax rate? Okay. So these two now are the same. And if we put zero taxes in, they're still going to be the same, these two. I'm going to perhaps make a little arrow that goes from here. Okay. Now, I'm not finished. Okay. So how about if I put the 2% growth rate in, we still get the same. If I put 0% growth rate and 40% tax, we just get the same. But here's the problem. When I put 2% growth rate and 40% tax, then this market value gets inflated because we're using this in the denominator and growing it. Okay? And what you can do is say, well, here's the net method. Here's the formula for the net method. It's the cash flow multiplied by 1 plus g divided by kd minus g. And the other method, you multiply 1 times t at the end, and it's a little bit of a different formula. And I say, okay, you can take the gross method and multiply that by the net method. Okay, and we can find an adjustment factor. A is the adjustment factor. So I put these together, you rearrange the formula, and you find the adjustment is kd divided times 1 plus g times 1 minus t minus g divided by kd minus g. See, it's a little bit different, times 1 plus minus d at the end. And when you do all of that, if the t is 0, it becomes 1, this adjustment factor. If the g is 0, it becomes 1 again. So let's try this. So let's put a 0 here. That adjustment factor becomes 1. Let's put a 0. That's just because of, you can demonstrate that equation. So what you can do in the very end is say, all right, I'm going to I tried different adjustment factors, but this one says, okay, I'm going to take this adjustment factor, I think I named the range, and I'm just going to multiply the net method. I've got to, excuse me, perhaps make this a little smaller. So now I can put an adjustment factor into the net method and get a little bit different result. Now here's the deal. Yeah, I did all this. That demonstrates with a formula that you really do get different results. The biggest thing is the true economic value of the firm, the true economic debt. The true economic debt is at the providers of capital don't get a tax deduction. They don't get anything special. That's the cost of capital kind of in the economy. You get a lower market value of debt, a lower effective leverage because of this. And so the correct method is using this net method. It wasn't a great explanation just now. So now let me put the cost of capital down, put the cost of capital up, and you can see the difference in the valuation. So my suggestion, it's a horrible one, is when you do the DCF, use the net of tax use the net of tax debt in the capital structure. I know that, and then come up with the value of the equity. I suppose you can present your methods anyway. At least you'll understand the bias. There is a bias. There is a bias, a little bit of bias in this WAC method. Maybe somebody can disprove it to me. Maybe somebody can disprove it to me. I've been working a lot on all of this stuff, and I'm going to say goodbye right now and put this thing on the website.